Contrary to what you may get some comfort telling yourself, the AIDS attackers made no secret of it. In fact, what they did was put together a coalition of the willing. As a result of that, you don't have county government officials calling the Pittsburgh police and saying, we demand an investigation into the Wattenmakers. Instead, you have Norm Finkelstein parading himself as a champion of Gaza, when he and Noam Chomsky knew all along and virtually advertised the idea of selling, rubbing genocide titillation industry in the faces of the consumer. The TikTok war did not just happen. That was set out on a timeline. And so you have the ongoing bray of a Holocaust revenge society who have carjacked the White House. There's a housejacking going on right in front of your eyes with regard to what happened to me. Carnegie Mellon University and Seattle Mental Health castrated me and gave me Parkinson's to punish me for snitching. But they sold it with the help of Paul McCartney and John Schulman as a way of getting even for their own victims of AIDS in the name of Yoko Ono and John Lennon. So you see, it's not just really strange, but it's scientifically strange. They chose me because they followed my father, who was a lieutenant in the Pacific Fleet in World War II off the coast of northern Japan when the bomb, Little Boy, was dropped, and they came after me as a little boy from the fleet. And lo and behold, Seattle made music of the whole story by saying, we're powwowing with the Native Americans who are a victim of the white people. And so they're helping Japan get revenge. They're helping the Holocaust survivors get revenge. They're threatening us with nuclear war, and they love it. Their own children they're targeting because of their ideology. Their bizarre phantasms about the equity of contagion that come from Cornel West, whose ideology served the purposes of the nightmare weasel, Ronald Reagan, shown to have been allied with Adolf Hitler. They didn't just not investigate, not get to the bottom of the Kennedy assassination. They didn't bother to investigate. If that's not true, how come a deaf poet working in a Carnegie Community College library was able to solve it in due course with some ease, despite the obstruction whereby Seattle, for example, refused to allow me to go to school because they knew what I was doing? I ended up elsewhere in Phi Theta Kappa, and Seattle didn't even have the decency or the dignity to apologize. They're justifying using me. They have this expression, sitting on the fence. Let me tell you what that means. They make it sound like it means we haven't made up our mind as to what is right and wrong. That's not what it means. What they mean by sitting on the fence is they're sitting on their perpetrator stash, wondering if they're going to get away with it. You know what a fence is? A fence is like John Schulman, who was caught after years of my attempting to testify against him in an $8 million museum heist. Who was his partner? A man from Ellis. His partner, a girl from Ellis, was also his partner. Leslie Katz was also a partner of Paul McCartney. That didn't just happen. Paul McCartney didn't just stumble into a situation where he was backing the killers of John Lennon. It was planned. It was British Society of War who evacuated John Lennon and pretended that he died so they could advocate for the people who did it. Can't you see? The people who did it come and say, we stand with John Lennon, and the victims say, we stand with the people who did it to us. And that's Seattle. That's the totality. That's what Seattle's brilliant spinner meetings add up to. Now, I'll go into a little bit of the psychology department here. Oh, by the way, you can fact check that. They have a 20-foot tall mural of Gail Burston playing the violin. You know, Jaime in Seattle Center from years ago. They have a Midori Teriyaki by Greg Zotto. You know, Greg Carl wrote this whole thing out as Two Virgins Pussy Ball. The persona is subjected to successive degradation of the X motive and then subsumed into a larger structure dominated by its adversary. And the person who degraded my X motive was working with Jaime Carbonell in linguistics and extruded the carrot tape, which was something that was impinged on the persona's experience by the people who did it as a pornographic satire and told him about it when he was a hostage, crying, traumatized little boy. Andrew Swimmer worked with Jaime Carbonell, extruding the lateral language impingement tape, which referred to teriyaki and Midori Goto, with Gail Burston playing violin at Seattle Center. It's all networked here in Seattle. They were the ones who did it. Make no mistake. Their arc of colors has been signified in books I've found here about religion in the Soviet Union. Russians were signatory to that. You can tell by the library card signatures from 1974, which I've gone into elsewhere. And you can tell that from the signatures, that the Russians were signatories to the Texas school book. Oswald didn't just go back and forth between Texas and Russia. He was an intermediary between the two forces at work, which were the non-aggression pact. Now, I've gone into all of that elsewhere. You can check my Kennedy research. I want to go into some things I haven't gone into. Ian Whitemaker loved MASH. Remember the hot lip sequence? He loved the hot lip sequence. Well, his mother, Edith, had lips on the car, a starter button that could be set to on. So all you need to do was turn the lips and you get a hot car, hot lips. And this was all networked through linguistics. He took me to the Blind Dead, which had a vomit bag, but they had run out. I was supposed to be disappointed. He took me to two-headed transplant, and Michael Todd showed me the caverns at Cave Hill in Harrisburg, where his father worked with the governor's shop, putting my name on one of their bombs. Well, the truth about this society is that they came with a vomit bag in the name of the pitmans and the quarrymen and kidnapped me and gassed me in a vomit bag. And then they had the people sitting on the fence saying, why did he continue with vice? Well, they were setting up a Venus flytrap, as I proved on Mount Desert Island. I recorded Botstein 35 years ago from Mount Desert Island, that they were making up a story that the neuroplasm was a hit, which was from being kidnapped on a snowy day, was hiding a date rape. And you could see it in the records of Seattle. They all were in on it. They knew they had kidnapped, tortured, and traumatized someone as a child, deafened him, and then lied about it, saying he wanted to impinge his persona on a cuckold. And they did rapid, and they made a long interrogation sequence, which I'm still being house-jacked at the age of 65. McCartney is house-jacking me. He turned everything I did over to Yoko Ono and said, we steal the bacon. So they're stealing their own story is what they're doing, and they're using me um, insidiously. Like when I was a child, I used to say "noo pooped," so the people would stop looking at me, you know. So they said they put up a guy named Sue Nunu because they had inside copiousness with the Nancy Reagan crowd in my household who worked for Fox Media and so on. So these people who were hiding encryptions when they murdered my father, for example, don't know who, Don Ono Netanyahu, don't know who, are the ones who are supposedly doing the interrogation because of what Seattle polled. If the people who released AIDS are standing with John Lennon, so are the victims, and na comes from Paul McCartney. And he did this with Michael Caine and the Sleuth crowd. So if you look at the name game, you find a lot of evidence of housejacking that went back to like when I insured my father's inheritance, which got like the cashmere coat was fed by one of these ghouls to his dog. They had someone named Rick Lux, which is luxury, like Rick Rick Clucks. You know, and they put me on Moscow Street because Midori Goto was working with Putin on monitoring my house when I fell in love with Masako again. And it's all an immoral calculus. But Harper's Magazine was also in on it. It's an American way of war. They have this thing about tulips, because tulip, winners and losers, is a casino. And they premeditated the COVID bomb for the winners and losers mentality. And the housejacking is them sitting on the fence. You can look into Schulman's relationship with Adam Eisenstadt. It's tawdry example, Pittsburgh being Pittsburgh and then having Seattle as backup. I mean, if I told you the story, it would lose its charms. Look into it. My grandparents were married 66 years. So, you know, Trump wants everybody on his mobile. Everybody's claim to selfhood and ego satisfaction is association with Trump. None of this Midwest dignitaries. So he attacks this distinguished citizen of Poplar Bluff, this couple who were distinguished citizens of Poplar Bluff by vote of Poplar Bluff City Council, by the way. They had a pen that designated them distinguished citizens of Poplar Bluff. And they beat my brains in to the tune of a picture of a little girl called The Big Friend Sleeping in the Dragon's Mouth. It's by Shulamith Wolfling, who also did Blumen and Blotter. These people were introduced to me by Blumenfeld, who organized the gang that tortured me, and they called the nerve age that they forced on me Blotter. And Reagan comes in Tacoma with his gang, saying the man who tortured you and poisoned you with a sarin nerve agent was a U.S. Army representative, and you're a traitor for telling the truth about how you were nearly killed, forced to swallow, dragged through glass, humiliated with Michael Reagan's favorite scene. So when they blow up Menab, it's in defense, you know, the girls scoring around, in defense of the little girls, Dee Dee and Gail, who were Nazi exterminators. And you're supposed to say, wow, that is so neat. I'm a chivalrous person when I exterminate Gaza. Wow. And you have no access to the law. I had the courage to go to the federal law and present that a genocide had clearly been written down and planned and executed in contempt of American law. And they claimed I did not make a charge and dismissed it. It's as ridiculous as that. And what they're scheming is guerrilla theater because they're mountebanks. They're sitting on the fence. They want to sell this tall tale. You know, Gail Burstyn appears on a 1979 record of Robert Fripp. She's the one who put my name on Shapiro's bomb. And they work with her. 1979, that's a year before they claimed John Lennon, whatever he did, double fantasy. And they say man is man is man from Bertolt Brecht. It's like the scene in Full Metal Jacket where the really nice guy turns into a monster and kills himself. That's what Gwiener had in mind when they poisoned me. And Gwiener gave her wife gave her husband, cigar smoking Yoko Ono, a blank check for this housejacking syndicate that is obviously still on. And they encrypted it with a girl named July Sellers, which they had a nuclear magnate living in her house a little bit later. So someone threw a switch and media replaced democracy. The form that Japan's revenge took was fully assimilated by then. As a symbolic target, I had no access to the law. The local judge may as well have been in The Hague. AIDS, trauma, and terror generated a major brainwash opportunity for Seattle. It meant that they could scare the living daylights out of a poor, traumatized deaf boy. And they couldn't wait. They wanted to make it real. So they poisoned me on behalf of the people who were threatening to blow them up. Because the victims must stand with the perpetrators in the name of John Lennon. That's Seattle's whole them. Just by having to deal with the illicit accusation, I was steamrolled into a psychiatric prison where I dutifully scoured the Android zone and extracted the evidence from international cinema. The form Ona's attack took was a devious decoy. All the associates she had to do in media had to do with pretend they don't understand. Sit on the fence and see if we can get away with it, in other words. From there, they poisoned me again and again. Even my eyes are fading. So that gives you some indication of what's in the notes that they're trying to shut down. It's a strategy of, I can't read my own writing. But Shannon Harps was Ripper murdered at the penny line because of the C and the Star of David that the symbol of decency in Japanese pornography uses to signify their strategy of alleged exploitation. Only Lennon can exploit you. That's the only thing that's fair. It's an immoral calculus. It has nothing to do with exploitation. They want to rob a deaf man who they tortured in a housejacking of his life's work, which was actually motivated not by their accusations, but by an attempt to warn. But the time frame had the two things on a trajectory. We're going to accuse the object before it can warn. It was associated with humanism and St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And what it is, it's a crowd who believe they're lunatics. They should be being drummed out of sustainable government entirely. They believe that the book of Revelations is an auto manual, an owner's manual to bringing back Jesus. So they're setting everything up. Oh, we can do that. Let's do it scientifically. They're criminally insane. They have these go by Kurt because one of them was named Kurt. It's like a 20-year-old washout from the Banana Wars. And he says, oh, this world is nothing. Speaking on behalf of 1 million children who've been exterminated, who haven't had a chance to live. He says, when it passes a puff of smoke, it won't mean anything. And they give these sadists these criminally insane people, the keys to the nuclear bombs. That's how weasel the British government and the city of Seattle are. That's how deranged they are. And they call it progressive. They come down from the left and say, oh, it's an arc of colors. It's an arc of colors. Pramila Jayapal represents our womanhood. And it's really that stupid.